Chapter 27. The Potential for Rehabilitation. Modern rehabilitation efforts focus heavily on behavior, while often overlooking a critical layer beneath it: biology. Researchers such as William J. Walsh and Carl Pfeiffer compared incarcerated populations with non-criminal control groups, analyzing laboratory patterns that might help explain behavioral instability. Their findings were consistent and difficult to ignore. Across multiple studies, prison populations showed significantly higher levels of toxic heavy metals, such as lead, cadmium, and mercury, alongside pronounced nutritional imbalances, including deficiencies in zinc, B vitamins, and other compounds essential for neurological regulation. These are not abstract variables. There is substantial evidence that heavy metal exposure can affect brain function, impulse control, aggression, attention, and long-term mental health risk. Lead exposure, in particular, has been linked to ADHD symptoms, executive dysfunction, antisocial behavior, and increased aggression. At the same time, nutritional deficiencies, especially in B vitamins, zinc, and magnesium, are consistently associated with depression, impaired stress response, and reduced cognitive performance. This distinction matters. Biological factors do not fully determine behavior, but they can significantly constrain or destabilize the conditions under which behavior is formed. Environment, experience, and choice still play decisive roles, yet those forces operate through a biological substrate that can either support or undermine regulation. Biology and behavior exist in a bidirectional relationship. Physiological instability can impair decision-making, while chronic stress, poor diet, and harmful environments can further degrade biological function over time. For some, this relationship is not theoretical. It is lived experience, as it was in my case. After the birth of my second son, I experienced a sudden and severe shift in emotional regulation. What had previously been manageable stress responses escalated into episodes of intense, uncharacteristic rage. The change was significant enough that I made the difficult decision to ask family members to take temporary custody of my children to ensure their safety. I also stepped away from my work as a nanny while I sought answers. Initial explanations focused on stress and circumstance, but they did not fully account for the severity or sudden onset of the symptoms. It was only after encountering the work of William J. Walsh, particularly in nutrient power, that I began to explore a biological dimension. Laboratory testing revealed elevated copper levels alongside deficiencies in zinc and vitamin B6, imbalances known to affect neurological function and emotional regulation. With targeted nutrient therapy, the shift was not subtle. As the underlying imbalances were corrected, emotional stability returned, and the episodes that had once felt uncontrollable resolved. If this can happen in an otherwise functional adult, the implications for populations under chronic stress are significant. This experience did not eliminate personal responsibility, but it reframed it. It demonstrated that behavior cannot always be understood or repaired without first addressing the biological conditions that shape it. Despite this, the relationship between toxic burden, nutrient status, and behavior remains fragmented across disciplines. Toxicology, psychiatry, biochemistry, and environmental health each hold pieces of the puzzle, but they are rarely integrated into a unified rehabilitation model. As a result, important signals are often overlooked, not because they are unknown, but because they exist in isolation. Current medical approaches to heavy metal detoxification, including chelation therapy, are effective in clearly defined cases of acute or high-level exposure. However, their ability to address chronic, low-level accumulation, particularly within the brain, is more limited and remains an area of ongoing research. The challenge is not simply removing toxins from the body, but doing so safely, selectively, and in a way that meaningfully improves neurological function. A responsible approach does not assume this problem has already been solved. It recognizes the gap and creates conditions where it can be studied with greater clarity. This is where the structure of a stewardship village becomes uniquely valuable. One of the persistent limitations in behavioral research is the quality of the comparison group. Both criminal and non-criminal populations are often drawn from environments characterized by instability, poor nutrition, chronic stress, and undiagnosed mental health conditions. The difference between them is frequently one of degree, not kind. This blurs the contrast and limits the clarity of findings. A stewardship village would make it possible to extend this line of inquiry under even clearer conditions. When individuals live in conditions defined by stable housing, nutrient-dense food, structured responsibility, meaningful work, and reduced environmental chaos, a more coherent physiological and behavioral baseline begins to emerge. This does not create a perfect control group, but it creates a far cleaner differentiation than is typically available. Against this backdrop, individuals entering the rehabilitation pathway can be assessed with greater precision. Nutritional deficiencies, toxic burden, sleep disruption, and chronic stress physiology may become more visible when compared to a population operating under stabilizing conditions. Over time, such an environment creates a rare opportunity, a living system in which biology, behavior, and environment can be studied together rather than in isolation. Patterns that are currently obscured may become measurable. Interventions can be tested more systematically. Rehabilitation methods can be refined based on observed outcomes rather than assumption. This research must be ethical, voluntary, and privacy protected. Its purpose is not to reduce individuals to data, but to improve the accuracy and effectiveness of care. The implication is simple but significant. A system that ignores the biological dimension of neurological stability risks misdiagnosing the problem and mistreating the person. Before expecting consistent behavioral change, we must first ensure that the conditions required for stability are present. Only then can responsibility, discipline, and moral development take root in a sustainable way.